We're back now with a hard look at what is an American disgrace, the treatment of immigrant children at the border. This week, officials moved hundreds of children out of one of the worst detention facilities after reports of deplorable conditions. At a contentious court hearing, judges took a government lawyer to task for the conditions there.
It's within everybody's common understanding that, if you don't have a toothbrush, if you don't have soap, if you don't have a blanket, it's not safe and sanitary. Well, wouldn't everybody agree to that? Do you agree to that?
Well, I think there's fair reason to find that those things may be part of safe and sanitary.
Maybe, are a part. What do you say, maybe?
We're joined tonight by one of the few reporters who's been on the front line since the beginning, John Carlos Frey. John, thanks for joining us. Your new book on the subject, Sand and Blood, is just out. What do you make of what's going on with the children at the border?
I have report after report after report of children being mistreated by Customs and Border Protection over the past couple of decades. You and I have even reported together about things that happen on the border. I'm actually glad that this is coming to the forefront, but this is actually U.S. policy. We're supposed to make this journey and incarceration about as bad as you can possibly imagine. This is part of what Donald Trump is basically using legally.
In other words, to make it, to discourage families from making the move towards the U.S. Is that the idea? Make it so painful?
Yes, the policy is known as a deterrence policy. We're never going to be able to keep everybody from coming. We're never going to be able to seal off the border and keep migrants from coming. So let's shake them up a little bit. Let's make them cross the deserts or the mountains. If we catch them and we incarcerate them, let's not give them a cushy bed. Let's not give them good food. Let's not even let them sleep. Let's leave the lights on. No toothpaste, no toothbrush, no mattresses. The way the children are being treated is part of U.S. government policy.
I think this has all come to a head this week with some of those moving pictures of children. The young father who died along with his daughter drowned trying to cross the Rio Grande. Do you see opportunity for change here now because of a national outrage?
It seems like that's the only thing that ever moves the needle. If the citizenry is aware of what's going on, this is policy that has gone on under a cloak of secrecy for a long time. So I'm hopeful that the fact that this now is in the light and people are seeing exactly what happens, that maybe at least the administration may do something.
Your new book deals with the people who are actually making money from all this. How can that be?
Well, we just saw an appropriations bill that the House passed, and it looks like the Senate passed as well for $4+ billion for aid. Who's going to implement that aid? Those are defense contractors. That's $4 billion for the most part put into private enterprises' hands to feed the children, to provide sanitary conditions. This is all a system of private contractors that basically manage the border and manage the way people are detained. We detain about 50,000 people in detention facilities, and 75% of those detention facilities are privately run and privately managed.
So their discomfort means big money for someone.
It's estimated that when we started to see children at the border at the beginning of last year, that defense contractors swooped in and made about $1 billion instituting these places where they're being held. $1 billion to hold children.
John, some of your reporting that's been on this program has to deal with the fact that that area of Central America from which many of the people are coming is suffering from a famine with conditions that are really responsible, that are drying up the land, sort of climate change. We're seeing some of the early results.
The World Food Program, which is a subsidiary of the United Nations, in February this year has declared 2.1 million people as being food insecure. That is the step before all-out famine. And that's, as you say, is a direct result of people losing their crops. The region is drying out due to climate change. There's 5 drought now. It's to let up. So 2.1 million people who can't feed themselves, we're starting to see them at the border.
And you think that's driving them towards the U.S., the fact that they can't feed themselves, they don't have jobs?
Well, this is one of the sending factors. Migration is complicated. If you can't feed your family, if you can't find a job, if you're afraid for your life because of the violence, all of those things piled on may make someone make the decision to move northward, and that's what we're seeing. I was in the caravans at the end of last year that were heading to the U.S.-Mexico border. And many of the people that I spoke to were farmers who could no longer farm the land because the rains just weren't coming. And I talked to several people who were living on one tortilla a day. That's about as much as they could muster.
President Trump has repeatedly said this is the responsibility and the fault, frankly, of the Obama administration. Is there anything to that?
I don't even understand what that statement means. He's been president for 2 years. The executive branch is responsible for implementing immigration policy. I think Obama's been out of office for a while, so either he's not taking responsibility or trying to find blame. But it's his job now. If Obama screwed things up, that was a couple of years ago. It's his job now. His administration is responsible for what we're seeing.
Help our viewers understand the whole issue of asylum. U.S. grants asylum. We're being flooded with people seeking asylum.
We have laws on the books that actually allow people to come to the border and say, I am being persecuted. I'm a victim of violence. I am afraid for my life. I'd like to come and seek refuge in the United States. We let them in, and we allow them to go through a court process. It's the courts who decide whether or not their claims are legitimate. And if the court decides that they're not, they will be deported. 90% of the cases are usually not found to be credible. So most of the people are returned, but they are given the opportunity to make their claim. So the fact that the president is keeping people from making a claim of asylum is basically in violation of our own laws. The picture that we're all seeing, this horrible picture of the man with his child drowned in the Rio Grande, is said by his wife to have tried to make a claim of asylum, but he was denied, so he tried to swim the river. So I think that there is blood on the hands of the administration by not allowing these individuals to make the legal claims, and in some cases, that's why they're coming to the border.
Blood on their hands? You really mean that?
Yeah, I really do. You know, I mean, if we're not giving children and families the opportunity to make a claim of asylum, which we by law are supposed to, and people are dying as a result, who's responsible? If migrants are dying by the thousands in the deserts due to our policies, are we not responsible? The only individuals or the only group who can alleviate the suffering is the federal government. And if they're not doing that, I think that we have to take a look at the fact that our policies are causing great harm. Yeah, I'm not really being hyperbolic here. And as a journalist, I'm very careful about the words that I choose. But I'm not sure that people would be dying in mass as they are or being treated in such inhumane conditions if it wasn't for the way we're implementing policy.
John Carlos Frey, thank you so much for joining us as always.
Thank you, Brian.